fantastic Friday edition, and certainly because of the excellent guests that we have, Dr. John Lee, Mr. Charles Clifford, Mr. Daniel Coleman, and we're hoping to also be joined by Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez. So please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you for joining us as we invite you to be a part of a discussion. Thank you equally to our guests. And two things off the bat, if I might be permitted to share. One is a very special public thanks to our guests. I can only begin to imagine that their schedules, the demand of their personal time, and even their very personal sort of self-care has to be taken into account, because they can probably be imagined that they've been running on empty for the last week or so. And secondly, to our listeners, if you would just allow yourselves to draw near, listen intently, and then at some point after we share information from our guests, maybe field some questions and engage you. But sometimes it's better to be informed, and then that way you can be engaged. Our Chief Medical Officer helping the Minister of Health, Dr. John Lee, together with the Director of CBC, Mr. Charles Clifford, and the Director of HMCI, Ms. Danielle Coleman. We're also hoping for the Director of Primary Health Care, Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez, to join us momentarily. Again, for what it's worth, on a personal level, thank you, each of you individually, but collectively for coming on here. We've watched the press conferences. I believe that this is the first time I've seen people move from SBT East End in 5 minutes, making a presentation in the town hall and then in the primary school. So you guys have been everywhere all the time. Thanks so much. Gentlemen, with respect to you, would we say good afternoon to the lady first and welcome Ms. Coleman to initial sort of opening remarks. Good afternoon, Danny.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having us on. Obviously, public messaging right now is such a key in all this to make sure everyone's prepared and ready, and also give a factual update as to what's going on the ground. So we're here to very much help and share that information with the public, and again, tell you what we're doing in the National Emergency Operations Centre to let you know that we're doing obviously a lot of work behind the scenes to get ready for this.
Okay, and Mr. Clifford, I guess your role, we have the physicians doing theirs, but sometimes your role with your team has a corresponding impact as well.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Ebanks, and good afternoon to you and to your listeners. CBC plays a very important role in this exercise, and we're working very, very closely with our partners at the Public Health Department, the Chief Medical Officer, Hazard Management, the Port Authority, and all of the other relevant agencies to ensure that there's a joined-up approach in terms of mitigating the impact of this issue.
That's the thing, where we talk about perhaps keeping it out of the shores, and then when we have it in our shores to contain it. So there's a lot that I think we as individuals could and should be doing. Maybe we can address that. Well, Dr. John Lee, again, sort of like a good game of football. You're the goalkeeper.
Thanks very much for the invitation. We're really pleased when we can share information with the public, because as we keep saying, and we really do mean it, the more information they can have from trusted sources, that's where we want them to get the information from, and we want them to get it right. Just for some facts and figures, the numbers of cases of COVID obviously are rising, but more than half now from outside China, and with the numbers that are reporting in China are falling into counting on two hands now. So they really have managed to contain things in China. But the problem is now Europe, and the head of the WHO is now saying that is the center of the pandemic that we have.
Okay. Again, potential impact on travel to and fro as we interact. We ourselves have our friends and family that are there that may be wanting to return home. Mm-hmm. So how do we deal with it? Well, let's see if we can get understanding, and I think hopefully as a people that we not panic any more than we have. Maybe we can pull back
I think that's so important. Again, I mean, it's just making sure you have the family plans in place, but also supplies. But don't be going panic buying. I mean, I keep hearing about people buying a load of toilet roll. You don't need massive supplies of toilet roll right now. So just making sure you're being sensible with what you buy, and just getting ready for, if you do have to be isolated for some time, then, you've got a buddy system and so forth. So we can speak more about that and see what that looks like.
All right, how do we help? I mean, Mr. Clifford?
Yeah, I'd just like to, the situation as we manage it on an hourly basis is quite dynamic.
It's changing at all times.
Yeah, it's changing constantly. And I just wanted to address an issue that's ongoing now. There's a flight that's arrived, I think from Miami at the airport, and I am aware that there are some reports out there about, what's going on, and the truth of the matter is we don't have all the facts at this point. We just know that there is someone on board who is showing symptoms. We have public health officials at the airport investigating that, and they will give us advice as to how to proceed. But again, we want to try to lessen the panic and remind people that they need to pay attention to official sources and not listen to what's in the social media that may be inaccurate.
Unless it's an official source who's got a social media page.
Yeah. So this is just happening at the moment as we speak, and as I said, the medical experts are at the airport. They're reviewing that situation, and they will advise us as to how to proceed and how to process that flight. But we're working, as I said earlier, in collaboration with our partners to ensure that it is truly a joined-up approach in how we deal with this issue.
I mean, I guess I can talk a bit more about what that joined-up approach looks like. The National Emergency Operations Centre was activated last week. It started with a partial activation, but again, now we've gone to full activation. And really what that looks like is we've got 17 emergency support teams, all specialised. So we've got things like human concerns, we're looking at mental health, we're looking at shelter operations, we're looking at a number of different concerns that would medical obviously is on that, but of course medical being sort of the expert in the area, they're sort of also full operations. We also have emergency response, and that again has things like search and rescue. Now search and rescue, there's no role right now for search and rescue, but there is for security and law enforcement potentially, and other emergency response agencies, including DPSC, 911. We have infrastructure, and that's things like utilities, making sure that utilities are, their continuity of operations is such an important thing. Water Authority, CUC, it's critical that those guys are really, ready to go for this, because otherwise, you see a potential shortage of supplies. So obviously we're working very closely with them, but also support services. So things like joint communications. Speaking with one voice right now is absolutely critical. And again, offering a reliable source, official source, so people can actually really know where to go and, utilise the information that they've got there, and also tips and tricks as to how to deal with this. Resource support, getting things like PPE and personal protective equipment, and economic continuity. Obviously, it's a private-public sector partnership, this, so having the Chamber of Commerce on board is a real critical aspect as well. So that National Emergency Operations Centre is a really critical tool that's been running now for about a week and a half, and again, there's lots of work being done there behind the scenes, but it will really help Cayman respond to this.
All right. Well, let's pause quickly and take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion. As we were sharing with our listeners, we would like to give you some information. We'd ask you to hold your calls just for now, as we have our panelists share with us. And then towards some time in the program, we can invite some participation. So please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Have you lost your mojo? Find it again at Mojo's in Central Terrace, Bayshore Mall, on the waterfront. Happy hour specials 5 to 10 p.m. every night. Free pool every night. Free parking every night. Food, happy hour, and stunning ocean views. Find your mojo at Mojo in Central Terrace. Central Terrace is home to Mojo, Cayman Creperie, and Lucky Slice Pizza.
Imagine if we all practice safe driving. Imagine if we all refuse single-use plastic. Imagine if we all turned off lights when not in use. We can all do our part in making our Cayman Islands safer, cleaner, and greener. Together, we can achieve. Visit gov.ky/safer, cleaner, greener to learn more.
Your Radio Cayman 6 p.m. news, Monday through Friday, is brought to you by Logic. Your life connected.
But I do have some questions.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks for joining us in the studio. Dr. John Lee, the Chief Medical Officer, Mr. Charles Clifford, the Director of CBC, and HMCI Director, Ms. Danielle Coleman, our guest. And these are perhaps for some trying and unprecedented times. I would ask, and you certainly guide me, that and all we're doing is saying that we sort of reach out to you. As I look at this, just the three individuals, not even what you represent in terms of your agencies, the individual body itself needs time to recover. If you were each working, 40 hours a day at, 15 days a week, at some point you probably get tired, even me. So please take time for yourselves as best you can.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh man, trust me, chocolate helps, but only so far. But as a public though, we're panicked. Sometimes unnecessarily so. We're being fueled by rumor and innuendo, inaccurate information, people speculating. We may say that's human behavior, but, and I say this, and again, I'll be guided, but I want the public to understand. Mm-hmm. Interaction in one of the supermarkets, last evening, as related to me. Two otherwise seemingly civil women are fighting who's going to get to the cat. Almost to blows, as they say. Women. Who's going to get to the cashier first? Now, what are they going to do when there isn't something on the shelf? Our mentality needs to be adjusted. Yes, we're fearful. But
I know, I agree. I think mental health right now is such an important thing for us all to be aware of, and making sure we're doing, I say mental health, mental wellness, but, keeping in touch with what we need to do as a stress reliever. We're trying to do all sorts ourselves. Obviously we're working around the clock, but it's really critical that people are really looking out for each other and making sure that they are finding ways and means of not being glued to the TV all day long and taking all this media, and especially false media. It's really important in taking official sources. Could we also, in addition to disseminate information, could we share with you some of the questions, some of the concerns that we're receiving sort of on our official channels, and whether you're in position to answer it now? If you're not aware of it, could we just share it and then see where we can go in terms of helping to deliver timely, accurate information? Yeah, that's why we're here. That's exactly why we're here. So some of the things, and I'm grateful to, I hope that people don't mind me saying, but our director and deputy, they lead, but they're digging in their hands. They'll photocopy, they'll bring water to the studio. This is what we need, all hands on deck. But for instance, questions have been asked about schools closing. Now we know in other jurisdictions those are happening, whether they're primary schools or whether they're university. So any sort of information, decisions relative to schools closing, Dr. Lee?
Yeah, so I think the schools are one of the areas which have got very well developed plans. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, at a public health level, there needs to be decisions at a national level about what's being done. The Cabinet, as the Premier advised yesterday, is meeting today on a lot of these weighty issues, and I suspect that at the end of the day we will hear, having had the information and the guidance that they've requested, what their deliberations are on these matters. So not only about travel restrictions, not only about public gatherings, but about schools and so on. I'm expecting something to come out today as was promised. Right.
And perhaps this is not advertising.
I might just say, but it could well be, because I know they've been at it all day, that it could well be that some of the things will come out either over the weekend or next week, because they've just got quite a lot of stuff to work through, and the ramifications as well.
And I would say this, like I said, it's not advertising to those who are listening, but we can't stress, just like in the aftermath or preparation for a hurricane, you tune to Radio Cayman, we will disseminate timely, accurate information. It's not, what is it they call, they try to get this thing so that you can get viewers and stuff. We're there
sensationalizing a story to make it.
Is that what they say?
I think it's something like that.
We don't do that, right? We just want you to get information so that you can use it. There's no fluff. There's no body hair powdered up. It's just accurate information. So it'll be on other channels, but if it's here, it's legit. And so we say that it's not advertised. So
Can
that
I also
information
just
come
add to
out.
that, actually, again, it's also making sure you're not sharing WhatsApp messages that you aren't sure about
Yeah.
whether they're legit or not. Because, again, we've had a couple this week that have created a lot of extra work for us. And it's just really important. If you see something come through your WhatsApp, just make sure you go on the actual CIT. I can't even get that right. That came around the government website and the obviously hazard management, but also public health / coronavirus. It's look at those three sources. If you see something on WhatsApp, check them first, because again, we are on top of this. We've got a very big team working on the comms, and it's making sure that don't send anything you haven't actually looked at the official source to check if it's actually verified or not.
Yeah. Can't stress it enough for me. How many of us get messages? And, oops, that's not. No, this is too important to stress people. We don't know. We also want at some point to ask about. We've heard it, but we would like it to be repeated often. Who's potentially more susceptible to, not just the symptoms, but if you are in this category of sort of sickness, then you may be. Some of the questions that we have been asked, and we filtered what we thought were maybe the top 4 initially. How prepared is the Health Services Authority to respond to this? Again, if that's a question we can ask, Dr. Lee?
Yes, certainly. So the groups that appear to be spared are the children and the young people. So that's great news. It gives us many people who have children, they can relax. I'm not saying that children won't get sick, but it appears that it's likely that a lot of them will get sick but have very little symptoms whatsoever. And the complication rates, again, are way, way down in the children. In the other groups, the elderly, those with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, chronic respiratory disease, and cancer appear to suffer more than others. So in many ways that is similar to many other illnesses, in that if you have some challenges, bodily challenges already, then you don't do as well. Your body cannot respond as well. Your immune system cannot respond as well. Equally, people with sort of immune deficiencies for one reason or another. As far as the HSA is concerned, it's not just the HSA, so I'm really pleased about that. All of the private hospitals are standing ready to help. We know there's an issue at Health City at the moment, but that issue will pass, and they're all standing ready and have all offered their services to help us cope across the island. So I'm really pleased with the cohesiveness that the medical community has shown with regards to this, private GPs too. And we've had meetings with them. The hospitals, we have much more frequent meetings because they have a lot more capacity. But we've had meetings with the private doctors, and we've been pushing out information too. And there'll be more of that to come for them. So I think we are very well prepared. And don't get me wrong, please. This is a serious condition, a serious problem. All countries recognise that. You can see because states of emergency or the highest level committees which deal with disasters and emergencies are all being activated in all major countries now. Ours was activated quite early on because I think it was well perceived that this would be an issue which we needed to take very seriously, and we have been doing so. So that's given us time. So the preparations have actually been going, I think, proceeding at a good pace. A lot of people have presented their plans. They've talked to their staff about it. Everybody in this room, certainly. And so that is really good news, to talk about the business continuity, to talk about what happens if your staff numbers drop, and so on and so forth, how you're going to deal with surge capacity and this sort of thing. So I think the HSA and the other health sectors are readied for this, but this challenge is going to still be significant. So there are parts of the plan still need to be put in place. We're waiting on equipment for the HSA, for example, but we have alternative plans should that equipment be late in arriving. So there are alternative plans for that. The benefit of the National Executive Operations Committee is that we can actually pull in resources that are not just health as well. So it is perhaps the case that at some point we may need to find alternative accommodations for people for health, and we've been looking into that too. But the most important thing that we need to ask people is if you can manage at home. In other words, if you're one of those, the large majority of people who just have flu-like symptoms, you'll be able to manage at home. So please don't go to the hospital. if you need to ring the flu hotline to get advice, but stay at home. Use paracetamol, acetaminophen, Panadol to lower your temperature, and manage at home. If you run into trouble, then call for help either through your GP or the flu hotline, but please manage at home. And encourage everybody else to do it too. I witted on a bit, I hope.
No.
I just to pick up a point that John said, I mean, again, this is a massive multi-agency response. It did start as Health, and Health did a tremendous job for several weeks when it was sort of showing its face. But again, having all these resources at hand, people, experts in the field doing the support services and making sure that, you know, Health do have all the support they need is critical for an effective response. There's so much logistics that go into this, between border control, between setting up facilities, between surge capacity for restaurants and so forth. It is a real multi-agency job. And again, we've been meeting daily for 2 weeks now, so it's very much underway.
And I just wanted to give sort of an update in relation to the issue with the flight at the airport. We've now issued a press release on it. You probably would have received it, which essentially says what I had summarized earlier. And we're continuing to work with Cayman Airways and the medical team at the airport to process that flight. So we'll continue to give updates as we make progress with that matter. But again, just wanted to underscore the advice that the public should pay attention to official releases, official information. Let's not, get into the false information and the false reports and the hoaxes that we see circulating on social media, because that is largely responsible for the panic that we see, not just in Cayman, but globally.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That panic, just not instill fear. But
hysteria is the worst thing right now. You really need to find ways to keep yourself calm and make sure that you're doing what you should be doing in preparedness.
Yes.
We've all seen the speed with which this virus has travelled. So it's here in Cayman. What the efforts of all of us at the moment is to try to slow its spread. And the reason we want to slow the spread, just to explain, is so that everybody can get access to all of the services and life can continue as much as normal if we slow the spread, because everybody is, large majority of people can still go about their normal business. The figure that I've advised people is, 90% of the population, the large majority, are going to have mild symptoms, and mild for a doctor doesn't necessarily mean mild
flu.
for flu symptoms. You tuck yourself up in bed, you take some paracetamol for a day and a half, you feel rubbish.
Lots of liquids.
And then you come out of it at the end. So that's what there's also going to be a big section who said, never touched me, didn't have anything. So the large majority are going to get through this, but what we were trying to make sure is that the people that need help can get help when they need it. It's not actually the large majority we need to care for. It's the smaller number, which is why we're trying to slow this down.
Yeah.
And as you were sharing, for those individuals, I want to make sure they may feel something, but they're not in that compromised category. They don't necessarily need to come to their physician.
Please do not.
Okay, do not.
Do not.
Okay.
Stay at home.
Right.
Once we know, and I think we are nearly there. Once we know that COVID is in the community at large, currently it's fairly restricted, but I suspect, within a week or two, we'll know it's in the community at large. Once we know it's in the community at large, we will also begin to not be testing people. You may be shock horror at that, but there becomes no point. We just need people to isolate at home until their symptoms have passed, and once they feel well again, that is the time which they can go about their business.
Okay. With that in mind, and I appreciate you sharing, that was some of the questions we're receiving. For instance, in Europe, we're told that they have, Ms. Norma gave me this phrase, drive-through testing. Would we be deploying that? Do we have test kits? Little things that people are speculating, passing, and it creates more anxiety and the like. How do we address that, Dr. Lee?
There is really currently, and I keep checking this, everybody's checking this all the time, no such thing as a test kit where you could, like a urine test, like a pregnancy test where you drop on and there's your result. Yeah. It will come, we'll have it, but it's going to be long further down the line. The kits that people are talking about are really a set of reagents. Reagents are the chemicals that you need a big machine to put the chemicals in and to do the chemistry, and out pops the answer. So it's a complicated thing that although people say kit, it is literally, it comes in a vial and it has a label on it, so people can call it a kit. But it's not really like the sort of kit you might think you could just buy off the shelf and do something in the bathroom and there you know your result. They do exist certainly for the influenza. So, when you hear person has been tested for flu A on the ship. That is because there are bedside tests for the diseases we know well. But because this is new, it's going to take a few months for them to come out. And they are in testing phases now, but it's going to take a little time.
Right. And not to direct all the questions to Dr. Lee, but from the perspective then of knowing that it's sort of in the community as you shared, what would that entail? What does that look like? That we have, one confirmed case now? Give us that perspective.
Yeah, so we have the one confirmed case in Health City. We also have some members of staff who have become unwell at Health City. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the pattern of that disease, so the patient arrived off a cruise ship with a cardiac problem. It was not a respiratory problem. With a cardiac problem and a pre-existing cardiac issue on the 29th of February. On the 5th of March, the patient started to become unwell about 6 days after the patient had arrived in the hospital, and at which point the patient was isolated. And the science shows it's exactly what we're expecting, because another 6 days later, that's when they had a lot of staff members say that they're ill. So when we say that you're not infectious for the period when you're not displaying symptoms, that was exactly demonstrated by the real life example we had at Health City. So if you're not displaying symptoms, we do not believe there's going to be significant transmission of the disease. The moment you get any symptoms, do not go to work, do not go to fosters, go home and isolate yourself, and isolate your close contacts and contact public health. If public health, there is problems with the phone lines at the minute because of the volume of calls, and we recognize that it sounds like it's ringing off, or you leave a voicemail, it doesn't get answered. We are having a huge number of calls, and they're trying to increase the number of lines so that this issue doesn't happen. It's not that there isn't somebody there trying to get the call, they're just not realizing it's there. So please keep trying to get the information that you need. But if you're managing, please don't go to the hospital, because that will put too much pressure on the system, and you're much better off staying at home when you haven't exposed anybody else along the path to the hospital. If you could,
Mr. Clifford, if not, we had a question in relation to select visits to physicians, regular scheduled appointments, and non-essential sort of movement by people. So, first question, we know. If I could disrespectfully say, use the HSA. Today's Friday, come next week Monday, people have scheduled checkups and check-ins with their physician. Not life-threatening, it's just getting test results. It's continuing to maybe do the x-ray that was scheduled 2 months ago. Should, if they're not life-threatening, should patients keep those appointments, or should they reschedule for 2 or 3 weeks down the road? What would be a good practice to employ?
I think if you feel that you're in an at-risk group and there's no urgency for that, I think it would be entirely reasonable for you to make that decision not to. But that advice may become stronger or more official, so to speak, if we get the confirmed case in the community, which we don't have at the moment.
Okay. So I guess be in contact, use the hotline. We're going to pause quickly, take a short break. When we come back, Mr. Charles Clifford, Dr. John Lee, and Ms. Danielle Coleman, our guests. For those who are listening, please stay tuned for Talk Today.
At Canine Resort and Spa, your dog gets the red carpet treatment. That's why people trust us and pets love us. Offering doggy daycare, boarding, training, and grooming services for any breed, size, or style. From head to tail, we'll make your dog smile.
Choose from 4 grooming packages, from the basic bronze package of a hydrobath, shampoo and conditioner, wash and blowout, to the platinum package including spa services like a doggy massage and berry facial. Canine will help your pet look picture perfect. Receive a loyalty card where your 6th grooming package is free. Limited availability.
Visit canineresort.com for details on grooming packages, doggy daycare, and resort services. Canine Resort and Spa, where the posh dogs go.
Don't strike out with this year's party planning. Strike in King's Pin Bowling at King's Sports Center. No mosquito, no heat stroke, and you won't break the bank. King's Sports Center, offering bowling birthday parties for all ages and customized packages to fit your party size. Book your bowling party today. Call 946-2695. Email kings@candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
Radio Cayman News.
It's just gotten really big, this black smoke covering the roads. You can see it from all over Georgetown.
I'm working with RCIPS to assist with evacuation.
School will resume once the fire has abated and the smoke is no longer a hazard.
I would like to commend all of the emergency services who have been involved in battling the landfill fire.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice for today's biggest news.
A public service announcement from Radio Cayman. Coronavirus prevention tip. If persons have policy questions, you can go to gov.ky and click on coronavirus. Be in the know. You can find the latest advice and guidance for households, businesses, and schools, as well as advice pertaining to older persons or persons with chronic diseases. You can also email questions to flu@hsa.ky or the hotline numbers of 1-800-534-8600 or 947-3077. For the latest updates and information, please visit hsa.ky/coronavirus.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us. And again, a very public thanks. I guess as a public, we should recognize the efforts being taken by officials. If I can again personally share that, for those of us who may have had shift work, who may be up studying for exams, can imagine over a couple of days, we probably get tired. The physical and the human body gets tired. For the three of you, our prayers are with you, and trust that you find the strength to sustain. Maybe some coconut water, but we'll see. And I see that
it's not just us; it's our staff.
Well, thank you.
They're on the front line. We're all on the front line basically in this fight, but we certainly need to thank our staff because they really are carrying a load with this and additional demands on them, and the same level of misinformation that's creating panic in the communities around the world is impacting ours, so it's impacting our staff as well. And we need to be mindful of that. So we continue to say, pay attention to the official sources.
Well, thank you. And I say that not to be polite necessarily, but for us to be mindful because, you have a parent who has a child that isn't sleeping well through the night. That parent gets tired, and they'll doze now and again. But you guys have, how many of us as children now in a nation to contend with? So, Chief Medical Officer Dr. John Lee, the Director CBC, Mr. Clifford, the Director HMCI, Ms. Coleman. Thank you for sharing with us. Again, as we talk about this whole issue of coronavirus, could we then maybe step back and revisit, just for those who have heard it but didn't hear it properly, maybe for their potential who are hearing it for the first time, signs and symptoms, preventative tips. What do we do to allay the fears? How do we look at where we are? What lies ahead? Let's share with us as you wish.
Again, social distancing is so critical in all of this. We're saying 3 to 6 foot. We're so used to being very huggy and kissy as a community. And again, that's really got to stop because, at this stage, we really need to make sure our social distancing is really at the forefront of our minds. And that, of course, when he's talking about, your operations, your daily business, if you're going to an office and, of course, you're around big groups of people, that again has to be considered now as a no-no. Washing hands is really critical, and again, I've always had this habit of sort of putting my hands very quickly under the sink and walking out the door. It has to be a 20-second or more if you want to, a real scrub. And women who have nails, again, it's those kind of things, jewellery, make sure you're really scrubbing well and keeping very, very clean and doing whatever you can to keep your house clean and your working environment very, very clean.
Yeah, and if I can just say the suggestion or recommendation, I should say, in relation to social distancing, you would appreciate that for obvious reasons that creates challenges for law enforcement, simply because of the nature of our work. But, we've looked at how we can mitigate that further. I mean, our officers are using gloves. They have masks available on the front line to give to anyone who may be displaying symptoms. And we're looking at additional measures. We have hand sanitizers available for them. And we have continued to sort of update our operational advice as we go along, as we learn more, as we get more advice from the medical experts. And that's how we have to approach it. It's not just CBC, but I'm talking about law enforcement generally. We have police officers, prison officers, officers in different areas of law enforcement that are on the front line, that the whole issue of social distancing creates sort of a challenge for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you have to take added precautions and so forth.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I think you've done really well. So I was going to actually go around the table and ask you guys. Give you a test.
Poor John's been speaking so much about this. We've learned so much from John in the last, and Dr. Sam and Lizette.
So the social distancing thing, we can develop it, and especially if you've got people who are vulnerable in your home, perhaps they're not mobile. So to develop that, this disease is caused by droplet spread. That means that from your mouth or from your nose, if you sneeze or cough, little tiny droplets of fluid will come out and pass, and it will land on all sorts of surfaces. It might land on a hard surface, it might land on the furniture. So that's how it spreads, and then if it lands on your hands and you touch something, it can move from one place to another. So you are carrying it, you're taking it. So you don't want to go and take it to your grandfather who may be in the bed, or to somebody else who needs actually your care and attention. You want to make sure that you wash your hands and keep them clean whenever you approach a vulnerable person, so that you can protect them. That's a big thing. And the other thing is this about social distancing. I've talked about sneezing and coughing. If somebody has a respiratory condition, say, what are you doing here? You should be, at the moment, you should be isolating yourself until it passes, please, to protect all of us. Please help the whole community from stopping this, and do what's right, and take yourself away to
isolate.
And again,
when you talk about isolation, I mean, make sure you have your plans in place. As in, how does that look like for you? Do you have the food supplies? Again, don't go panic buying right now. You can have a buddy system, have someone who's not isolating, who can actually go buy products for you if you need them from the supermarket. And again, when they come in, make sure you sanitize the actual products themselves, because obviously this virus can be held on surfaces for some time. And again, that time is anywhere really between, I think, 2 to 9 days. Different times are coming out daily, so it really is a live...
Studies about that suggest that it may be a matter of hours, up to, on hard surfaces, up to a few days. But that's a preliminary scientific study that's come out, but we just need something a little bit harder, or more people to repeat it, so that we can say it more with confidence.
So just take precautions all the way, and make sure that those things coming into your house are cleaned, and everything thrown in the bin beforehand. And
it's standard cleaners that we could use. So absolutely standard household cleaners are the things that people should use around the house. It's nothing special. This virus is a relatively fragile virus, like many of the viruses in the coronavirus family. Clearly, in the work setting or in a clinical setting, then I would say follow the guidance that exists on, like the Public Health England website and hsa.ky/coronavirus and gov.ky/coronavirus can send you to links about cleaning and this sort of thing.
You reference sort of self-quarantine. What that
self-isolation.
Yeah. Okay.
John can explain the difference between self-isolation and quarantine.
Maybe we should.
One's more legal. One's
I do recognize that. But in the case of, say, there's a family of 4, for instance, and one member of the family, one of the parents have been or suspect. They live in a 3-bedroom house, just whatever design that is. How do you self-isolate? What would that look like for that family? And would the other 3 members, and I was even say throwing a dog in there, but we understand that WHO has now said that the dog, so who let the dog? Mr. Clifford Salah.
No, I saw it on social media. That's why I'm laughing.
I haven't seen that. I haven't looked at that.
Shut up. Just a little bit of humor, because that's how I get through my day.
It's good. It's important.
But so what would that self-isolation look like in that scenario?
I think that's, and for many people, that's the $1 million question, because they need, what am I going to do? So there is an information sheet. I'm not sure if you've seen. I could leave that one with you.
Yes, please.
About guidance for COVID advice sheet for home isolation that's been circulated by the Ministry of Health.
All right, Madam Speaker, let the record reflect that the gentleman has handed it. Sorry.
So I mean, that is some very clear guidance, and whenever we produce these things, we get a lot of people to look at it, to sense check it, and make sure that the details are correct. correct. So hopefully that will give helpful advice. And that is available for download. I know for some people download is not a helpful approach, but we've also been sharing these with your MLAs. We've given a stack of these to all the MLAs in order that they can take them back into their constituency, along with the FAQs, the frequently asked question sheet that you have in front of you, Mr. Ebanks, and also the pictograms showing what you should do to protect yourself.
And actually, they've also gone out to some of the CERT teams, and CERT teams, community emergency response teams, will help distribute them as well. So we'll be dropping them around, making sure that everyone can get them who haven't got access to emails and.
Yeah, we're particularly concerned about that group, perhaps the more vulnerable, and if they don't have access to all these electronic media. So if you know somebody like that, just print one off and go and drop it around their door to make sure they have it. Please think of your neighbours.
There you go.
If are you going to break? Okay.
But go ahead.
Right. So I just wanted to give an update because I know that on the aircraft at the airport, because I think that's important. You don't want the wrong information going out there. The majority of passengers have now deplaned the aircraft, and that was in accordance with the medical staff advice. The medical staff would have advised those passengers as to whether or not they should self-isolate. The passenger that was displaying symptoms was in the business class section, so that section remained on board with the crew and the medical staff, including a doctor and the head nurse. So they're making, detailed assessments on that to determine how to proceed from there in relation to those, the deep cleaning of those remaining passengers and crew. So that's where we are at the moment. I wanted to get that information out there because I think that's important that we do that. And again, at CBC, we're not the medical experts. We have to rely on the medical experts' advice, and that's what we do. And that's why this joined-up approach is so important.
All right, as we go to the break, I know people are probably genuinely concerned, but becoming anxious, becoming agitated, belligerent, it doesn't help. It's probably easier said than done for some of us who are a little bit more collected and a little calmer, but nonetheless, see what we can do, looking after our neighbours. We'll pause, we'll take our news break. We do have an opportunity for some callers to join us. We'll invite that after as well. Please, stay tuned for Talk Today.
You are listening to Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have here on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice. For today's biggest news.
Access to information.
Local, regional, international. This is headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom team.
Today's biggest news.
An active situation happening now at the Owen Roberts International Airport, where Cayman Airways Limited (CAL) confirms that a passenger on board flight KX-103 from Miami this morning presented with a cough during the flight. In an abundance of caution, particularly given the heightened awareness during this time, CAL worked with local health authorities to implement the necessary protocols upon the flight's arrival at Owen Roberts International Airport. There is a press event happening now for those wanting to learn more about COVID-19 and the government's preparations. You can view the session via YouTube. CSD has granted all government users access to YouTube temporarily. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines and news elsewhere. Louisiana Secretary of State Kyle Ardoin has confirmed earlier media reports that the state is postponing its Democratic and Republican presidential primaries to help limit the spread of coronavirus. Elections had been due to take place in Louisiana next month, but have now been pushed back to June and July. And a 19-year-old pregnant woman from Guatemala died from injuries suffered after falling from the U.S.-Mexico border wall. U.S. and Guatemalan officials say Miriam Luna fell as she tried to climb the steel mesh barrier near El Paso, Texas on Saturday. She was taken to hospital where doctors tried to deliver the baby by emergency C-section without success. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
Hi, I am Dr. Lee, Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health. The Ministry and the Department of Public Health, along with our partners, are working hard to help protect residents from the novel coronavirus. Did you know the best way to help prevent infection is to avoid being exposed? So please, wash your hands frequently with soap and water, or use an alcohol-based sanitizer. Cover your noses and mouths when coughing or sneezing. And as best as possible, keep a good distance or avoid contact with anyone with symptoms of a respiratory infection. To read more about the public health's updates, please visit hsa.ky.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255. Let your voice be heard. And now, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us, and a very, very special thanks to Dr. John Lee, Chief Medical Officer for Health, together with the Director of Hazard Management, Ms. Danielle Coleman, and the Director of CBC, Mr. Charles Clifford. And if I might, at the outset, not just thank you again publicly for your continued sort of perseverance, diligence, but the candid, frank nature of our discourse. And as we get into it, I think some of the people would appreciate that, you know what, these guys speaking straight up. Mr. Clifford, you were sharing with the, as it happens, you know, with the air and the craft.
Yeah. And I think that's important. I mean, I think that, you know, we have to get the information out there. If we don't put the factual information out there, then we're going to get information being put out there that isn't factual, and that's not going to serve anybody's best interest. Yeah. So I think, you know, we're all honest about what's going on. We're giving the facts to the public and giving whatever advice we can to the public, and I think that's very important. I think we should continue in that.
And I think these kind of radio presentations are really good because, again, because it is such a dynamic situation, we can be reporting on what's happening at the moment as opposed to what happened last night in a physical press release.
Okay. Could we then ask, so we recognize the one confirmed case. We saw the public statements from Health City and the like. Dr. Lee, this is a small community as we've seen, and sometimes, unfortunately, conjecture, speculation, all sorts of things. Give us the take with respect to Health City. One question that we received publicly was, you know, with respect to the staff and others who are being quarantined. What is that looking like? And Ms. Coleman shared with us quarantine and self-isolation, their legalities. But tell us what's happening there. Give us the immediate occurrence now and the latest update.
I mentioned to you about the timelines of this incident happening. So the number of people who've become sick at Health Cities have done so in a very short period of time, suggesting it was related to, you know, a particular time or event that happened. I mean, that's the nature of epidemiology. You look for patterns, and sometimes they're really obvious and clear. As a result of that, not so much in the hospital, but also because many of the staff share common accommodations and share places to eat and to live. We feel that means that the organisation is currently at a risk. So to protect everybody, we have asked them to isolate, as you've seen has happened. This decision is clearly a public health one. I've sought guidance from Public Health England. I was talking to them through the night to say, you know, what if this, what if that, should we do this, should we do that? And it was quite clear there was only really one path of action that was being, that I had worked out myself, and it's always good if you've worked something out, you reflect with somebody else and see if, and I kept my mouth shut until they said what they had to say, and they confirmed that. So that is the path that we've taken in order to try and limit any spread, because essentially Public Health England is saying we really have to assume that the people who've become unwell have got COVID until proven otherwise. And similarly, as we've mentioned, if it starts to pop up in the community, I mentioned, we will begin to assume that people have got COVID, and that'll be the end of it. There's be no requirement to undertake a test if they're feeling unwell. We were praised by Public Health England for the things that we had done. I was directly asked, have you set up a clinic? Has it got a separate entrance? Have you got a hotline? How are you managing patients? What is the public information that you're sending out? Every single question, they said, good, you've done the right thing. Good, you know. And I think we've had the time to get ahead of the curve, and we have done everything we need to do in order to set up the systems to help to manage this threat of the pandemic. For Health City, it would have been, if Health City wasn't there, it would have been Georgetown Hospital. You know, it could have, or it could have been the doctors. It could have been Chrissy Tomlinson. So I'm enormously sympathetic with them. My heart really goes out to them. I mean, they must be feeling, crushed. But it would have happened to any of the hospitals. It would have happened, and it's going to come in the community. It just happens that it was there. And I thank them for their diligence and their communications with us and their honesty. I mean, that I've had from day one since I've taken this post. So I really, really thank them for that from the bottom of my heart.
And again, going back to support, I mean, under the National Emergency Operations Centre, there is support that we can give Health City at this stage, be it obviously food supplies or health sanitizing equipment and so forth. So we will be having that conversation with them as to what their needs are at this stage.
I do know on that point that I heard, I mean, this was a chat that we had with Dr. Bernard maybe 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago. He was telling us about their PPE supplies, and they just had a container come in, and they just, they have flooded with some of the things on the list. So I'm not worried in that regard. If that's going to pass from Health City, we're going to work through that. This is an announcement that you won't know, but Public Health England are also sending out a team to Cayman to assist us. Yeah, so they're going to come on Sunday. If that's really, I mean, they were likely to go to one of the UK overseas territories because Public Health England provides support to the UK overseas territories through the Foreign and Commonwealth office. But they because we've had a case and because we have this particular incident, they've said, okay, let's go and see if we can help in Cayman. But it's actually more to help to train the staff for this unique epidemic. All epidemics are different. All the bugs are slightly different. So it's to train people for this unique one to just go and make sure everybody has had the refreshers that they need to have refreshers about infection prevention and control and so on. No doubt they're going to help us with Health City about how to clear the patients, how to allow the patients that are there to be discharged and so on and so forth. They will assist with that. But it's principally about capacity, making sure our capacity is up, and if there's gaps, to try and help that capacity.
Yeah.
All right. We do have a number of callers online. Let's invite our callers. Mr. Clifford, Dr. Lee, Ms. Coleman are our guests. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Afternoon.
I'm very well, thank you. And I'm praising God for every second of my day right now. But most of all, I want to say a special hello to your esteemed guest. Hi, Chucky.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I probably going to pose a question to you, but my dear Dr. Lee is right there too, and the young lady, I know her, but she don't know me, I don't think.
Well, I know you now. It's good.
You know me now, yeah, my voice, I guess. Anyway, my question is a tenfold question. I have two members of my family that work front line. I call it front line because once you're at airport, then you're front line as well. It's kind of front line people in this country that they do not even stop to really recognize sometimes. Say, for instance, hypothetically, my daughter, who is a manager at one of the airlines in the airport, she was to come down with a flu. And the doctor just said, all you got to do, if it's a sign of a regular flu, just isolate yourself. But in a household where she has a baby that is under 2 years old and another one that's 5, and then, a household, unless you've got a spare room to lock up yourself away, babies could want to be by their mom because, in fact, one is still being breastfed. It's under 2 years old. What is the situation that should be done for cases like that? Should that person be quarantined at their home or into somewhere that government has prepared for people that need to be isolated? Can you answer me after I finish? The other question is that do you all think that there'll be a time when you will sort of have to put staff on what you would say then on suspension or companies on suspension, that their staff is not at jeopardy in terms of people that work at the airport and all like that? Because as I said, my grandson works for Cayman Airways, and he's at the airport as well on the tarmac. So I'm concerned heavily about him because he also lives with me, and I'm 69. So even though I'm trying to take all the things that are necessary to keep me healthy and keep me strong and up and going, sadly, I will not be able to go then to my daughter because if she's ill, she for one not gonna want me to come to even try to assist her because she knows that it's dangerous for me. So what should we do? And I'll wait for your answers. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. And if you can, because these are personal questions, but go
I
ahead.
think it's a very good question.
Yeah. So the issue about what to do with a young family is one that we've agonized about, because there isn't a right and a wrong answer. Clearly, I've mentioned already that children don't seem to get affected badly or not affected at all by the COVID, but it is very likely that they are able to carry it and pass it, even though they don't have any symptoms. So in all likelihood, if people are living in the same house, everybody in that house will have been exposed to the virus, including the children. So the recommendation would be that you would need to isolate the whole household equally. I understand that would provide trouble, that may provide some practical issues, and that's the point at which you need to see if there are any mechanisms around you, family, friends, who can assist you with that process, whilst not, as you say, exposing people who might be at particular risk. If there are families such as you're describing that have COVID, then it means it's throughout the community. So you'll find that there will be people around you who have passed through the process of having the illness already. And they will probably be very happy. They'll say, look, I know what it's all about. You'll be fine. I'm going to come around and help you and get you through this. But there isn't anything hard and fast, because everybody's situation is a little bit different. As far as the workplace is concerned, I think not only in the civil service but also in the wider workplace, every workplace, especially the larger ones, is talking about how to reduce the density of their staff and what are the options to do. With the fact that we have COVID online, don't know what I'm talking about. Bit tired, I'm sorry. On the island, it is really likely that the tourist numbers will begin to drop, which will actually have the effect of reducing the density in many of the workplaces that we're used to, because many of the businesses are so dependent of tourism that I've felt that density dropping already, as a combination of the fall in tourists, and also a lot of the companies are saying work from home. And my ministry as well, it won't affect everybody, but as said, if you can work from home, then we will. The civil service is encouraging it now. So.
And making sure you have the mechanism in place. I mean, it's
Yes.
difficult with this lady's situation, as she says, because obviously, son works for Cayman Airways, and daughter is obviously frontline at the airport, be it at CBC or otherwise, maybe perhaps in one of the stalls. I guess it's just making sure you have the family plan in place and have thought about what your support mechanism might look like. Because again, I think that's a really critical thing. How can you get the support? I mean, a mum with a 2-year-old baby, it's obviously quite a difficult situation if you have flu. So making sure you have someone that's a good buddy and who's obviously been through it or is willing to assist is very, very critical. But not obviously isolation is key in that.
I haven't said this yet, and I've been really wanting to say it to Director Clifford, that the CBC have been helping us so much through this. I mean, especially in the early stages. Now, almost everybody is a potential carrier, a traveller. But they pointed out so many people to us, and we followed that through and isolated those people and watched them, and we couldn't have done it without them. And we really, really appreciate their immediate help for this issue, because they recognised that they were the frontline people here. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. And again, that just underscores the importance of the collaboration and between the various agencies. And I certainly, now that he has said that, I want to take this opportunity to sincerely thank my officers. They're very dedicated, very committed. And sometimes people look at law enforcement officers as if they're superhuman, but they are human. And so the same fears that other members of the community have, they have as well. But they're still on the front line, and we're doing what we can. No one, nowhere in the world, no organization, no company, no government can guarantee anyone that they won't get this virus. I mean, if they did that, they would not be telling the truth. But we're doing what we can to ensure that our staff are protected.
All right. We do have some other callers online. Dr. Lee, Mr. Clifford, Ms. Coleman joins us. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon to you, Mr. Sterling.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you today?
Just fine, thank you.
Afternoon.
I haven't got it yet, I don't think. Anyhow, good afternoon to Mr. Clifford.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Lee and Ms. Coleman there.
Afternoon.
Very good to hear you all on. And I urge people to listen to these things. The experts, I have to call you all. I'm glad, I'm thankful for what you're all saying there and giving that confidence and assurance that no need to panic. And as you said, very importantly, Mr. Clifford, that we can't guarantee, and no one can guarantee, that you won't get it, right? But just mitigating things by trying to keep yourself as clean as possible, as disinfected as possible. You can't scrub everything you're going to buy from a supermarket. I quite understand packages that are sealed. You can give it a little wipe now. But other things you can't. You just have to, the good Lord will protect us and take us through it. I'm glad, Dr. Lee, that you answered that important question about children, because I thought about that this morning. I couldn't believe I hadn't thought about it before on children, but that they're not, because I haven't heard of any big amounts of children being affected. It seems as if it is very rare or very minuscule in this whole thing.
Absolutely.
And I want us to think and just value what I'm about to say. It is absolutely the imperative that our civil service continues to function. There is no country on this planet that can operate without a functioning civil service. I remember hearing Mr. Harry from McCoy there, when you're training manager, when you're simply explaining the function of government, what one of the persons who were there that date, 30 or maybe 40 years ago, when he said, what is government? He asked them all, and he said government is a system for keeping records. And if you see that's the majority function, it's absolutely essential that records, this is what we're all depending on now, the perfect or near to perfect system, keeping records and being functional. We can't function. You see it now. Everybody's asking questions of the civil service that 2 or 3 months ago they berated, insulted, and belittled many times, but now they see that you cannot. It's imperative to have our civil service functioning, albeit as it progresses, and the severity of it may increase, it may decrease, we don't know, over the next couple of months, that it may be toned down. Some non-essential services may be suspended for a while, some maybe can't. We know it will cost the government a lot of money, even when the private sector has to shut down certain things and belittle some of their businesses will be torn down as it has started to. And we know the tourism sector will suffer severely for a little while. So the government will have to take up the slack, as we know. So there will be a huge expenditure on the government. But we will survive, as happened with Ivan. We will survive this with the good Lord's help.
Yes, sir.
But it's imperative that people understand, and it is absolutely important, the function of the civil service must continue. That is absolutely imperative, albeit on a toned-down scale. But people must now realize that fact. And we're thankful for everyone on the front line, thankful for those brave firemen, thankful for the workers in the health services, nurses, doctors, and all the other people who are functioning there and helping and putting their life or their health at risk, because maybe 90-95% of the people who, this Dr. Lee's a doctor, won't really suffer any serious consequences. We know that. So people must focus on that issue. Life is a risky thing anyhow. But right now we have a little more of a risk. So let us band together and go through this, do everything that the professionals are telling us to do to try and avoid going out. We don't need to go out. Don't go out. Stay at home, especially if you're an elderly person and so forth. Thankful to everything you're saying and all the advice, and let us be sane, practical people and not subject ourselves to news and fake news and nonsense. Thank you again. That's all. I thank you for giving me the chance to say this. And God bless you all. I listen on.
Thank
Blessings,
you, caller.
So it sounds like I need to put you in my pocket and bring you out and to speak every now and then.
The caller makes a lot of good sense out. Again, things like nutrition and healthy living right now is really critical. Make sure you're doing what you can for yourself to be healthy, to eat healthily, to exercise, all those things, and your New Year's resolutions that you didn't do in January. This is the time to do it.
And if you smoke, then stop now, because really your lungs will feel an awful lot better in 4 weeks, and that will put you in good stead to fight off anything.
And I certainly wanted to thank Mr. Mickey for his comments. I think he's very eloquently put forward what he had to say, and certainly on behalf of the civil service, I'm very grateful for his comments and vote of confidence.
Thank you. We'll pause quickly for a very short break. We'll come back. We have some other callers to take, a few WhatsApp messages we would like to share with us as well. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
We all know there's nothing more refreshing than the taste of an ice-cold Coca-Cola straight from the cooler.
No one can stop me when I taste the feeling.
Whether it's celebrating a birthday, promotion, or just a great meal, make each moment a Coca-Cola moment.
No one can stop me when I taste the feeling.
Available across the Cayman Islands from Tortuga Distributors. Make sure you ask for the unforgettable flavor of a classic Coca-Cola.
Get ready for Retrospective, Cayman's National Dance Company's annual show at the Harkwell Theatre, March 27 and 29. Retrospective, a versatile journey of the company's signature dances and new creation. Tickets are $25 for adults and $15 for children, and available at Audiophile, Bang & Olufsen, Radiance Dance Studio, or simply call 926-1826. Retrospective by Cayman National Dance Company is sponsored by CUC, Burger King, ARC, Directors, Big Fish, 95.5 FM, Radio Cayman, and Hurley's Media.
At Canine Resort and Spa, your dog gets the red carpet treatment. That's why people trust us and pets love us. Offering doggy daycare, boarding, training, and grooming services for any breed, size, or style. From head to tail, we'll make your dog smile.
Choose from 4 grooming packages, from the basic bronze package of a hydrobath shampoo and conditioner, wash and blowout, to the platinum package including spa services like a doggy massage and berry facial. Canine will help your pet look picture perfect. Receive a loyalty card where your 6th grooming package is free. Limited availability.
Visit canineresort.com for details on grooming packages, doggy daycare, and resort services. Canine Resort and Spa, where the posh dogs go.
It's that time of the year again. Time for the Cayman Islands Meals on Wheels Change for Change coin drive. Time for us to come together as a community and raise much needed funds to support Meals on Wheels so they can provide meals to some of the most vulnerable members of our country, our seniors. They need 200 volunteers over 2 days. Will you donate just 2 hours of your time to come out and assist in collecting donations for Cayman Islands Meals on Wheels? Last year, the Meals on Wheels coin drive helped raise enough funds to provide over 6,000 nutritious hot meals to seniors, housebound, and disabled individuals in need. Thanks to generous donations and awesome volunteers like you who gave their time. Join Cayman Islands Meals on Wheels, Davenport Development, and Radio Cayman in the fight to end senior hunger in the Cayman Islands. Volunteer today. Contact Meals on Wheels at info@mealsonwheels.ky or call 769-1974.
Sports fans, tune in to Radio Cayman Sports Extra Show.
Hi, I'm Bruce Lee Colson.
Sports Extra.
This and every Tuesday night, right here on Radio Cayman, 89.9 and 93.9, Cayman Brack and Little Cayman.
Sports Extra, from 7 to 8 p.m., right here on Radio Cayman, the voice of the Cayman Islands. Sports Extra.
Proudly brought to you by King Sports Center, providing your fitness, recreation, and relaxation needs.
Proudly sponsored by High Fashion and Design Studio, truly your one-stop fashion studio, located in Cayman Trade Center, 199 Eastern Avenue. Call 945-4415.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks very much for joining us. And again, a special thanks to Chief Medical Officer Dr. John Lee, Director of HMCI, Ms. Danielle Coleman, and Director of the CBC, Mr. Charles Clifford. We do have a couple of the callers. We do have a few WhatsApps. Let's take the callers first, or let's take this next call. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling. Hello. Good afternoon. Welcome. Good afternoon. Okay. Well, not there. Can we share with you then some WhatsApp messages? And perhaps the first WhatsApp message, it says, good afternoon. I want to thank the guest for disseminating this very important information. The question is, we have heard that the virus has substantial lasting power outside of the human body and apparently survives better on certain surfaces, for example, stainless steel. But in terms of considerations for the home, should we be doing things like asking people to remove shoes at the front door? And can the virus be transported on clothing, etc.?
Yes, there's no question that the virus can transport on what we call a fancy word, fomites, so like soft furnishings, clothes, and so on. As far as the shoes are concerned, because the virus will normally needs to get into your eyes or your nose or your mouth in order to be successful, shoes are not usually thought to be an issue for that, because the feet normally stay well away from the face. So if you see any of the personal protective equipment, the so-called PPE that people are having to wear, the shoes are not normally included in the COVID protection. As far as clothes are concerned, yes. If I've mentioned it before, but there is a website called Public Health England, and on that website there is advice for the non-clinical settings and households, and in there it will say that if somebody is at risk, and it's also in the home. I can't remember, you've taken the leaf. I've given you my
home
leaflet.
Isolation.
But in the home isolation, it gives you specific advice about laundry in there. Yeah. So it says that sheets and clothes should be laundered at the highest temperature that the manufacturer recommends for that. If there is a case in the house, in order to protect yourself from the transmission, it also suggests that you should put if you have a dishwasher, you should put your things through the dishwasher in order to successfully clean them.
And I think we would hopefully have the website correct, but for those who want access the online hsa.ky/coronavirus, they can go and get information, and we'll keep it. A couple more WhatsApp questions via the WhatsApp, one including about the passenger that came in on the CAL flight. But first, this one is asking if a person was at the outpatient department yesterday at Health City and came in contact with staff there, doctors, nurses, admin, pathologist staff. Should that person be tested? This was yesterday. There are no symptoms. But
I mean, that's absolutely a valid concern. But it's the same. It's really the same answer as the answer you'd give if you'd met a work colleague or so on. It's or somebody in the community. If they don't have symptoms, then we do not believe that is will be a significant way of people would catch the disease. So the answer would be no. There's no reason to be concerned on that score.
Okay. This one posed a question. The person who came in on the Cayman Airways flight, where would that person be quarantined? At HSA? Or where do we know?
Well, as I mentioned earlier in my comments, the medical team at the airport, which includes the head nurse and a doctor, they're working with our CBC officers. They're going to provide professional medical advice on that. So I'm not sure whether Dr. Lee's in a position to answer that any further, but I'm not at this point.
I think I could just only talk in general terms, because clearly I have not been party to the conversation in the aircraft or with the teams that are there. But the answer would remain that if somebody was well enough to go home, then they're likely to be allowed to go home and be advised to be followed up through the flu hotline, just as any other traveller. It just happens that they were picked up at the airport, which is clearly somewhere where more people congregate and so on. So you want to be able to give the people around them the advice that should they develop any symptoms, this is the path and the mechanism they take it forward. I'm guessing that I'm not there, but I'm guessing that is the advice that they would be giving, and to try and relax, because it could be that the person. You could be meeting somebody with COVID in Kirks or in Foster's or wherever. It is possible. So we just need to attend to that hand hygiene, need to attend to and trying to keep the distance. And if you get symptoms, isolate yourself and then seek advice from your routine healthcare professional through the hotline.
Sorry.
So I was just going to say, and I'm not the medical person here, but I think it's worth repeating, Dr. Lee, that what Dr. Lee said earlier in relation to the majority of people who contract this virus are going to be just fine. They're going to be sick, they're going to have symptoms of the flu, but they're going to recover fully. And I think that's an important message that we need to continue to repeat.
All right.
Thank you.
I know you referenced this earlier in relation to testing, but message or questions comes in, you know, when will we start testing samples? And you talked about if it's in the community. Would you repeat that for us, please?
Yes. So the testing is a resource, and resources have finite availability. So we are slightly concerned that there may be a resource issue with regards to the testing reagents. We will test people as they're needed in order to make sure that they're keeping the community safe, and the testing will be quite vigorous in the early stages, which is now. If it should be that COVID becomes we know that it's a community disease and it's popped up in a lot of different places. At that point, we will switch and the testing will really drop down, because we will assume that everybody has COVID. There is no point testing them. It doesn't advance the treatment at all. We know what we have to do. We have to isolate, stay at home, take pyuretics, keep your close contacts at home until it's passed, until the 14 days has passed, and then then you can go back into the community and follow the advice from the flu hotline.
Right.
And when we get into that phase, we're going to be we've currently got an advice sheet for home isolation, but we will develop even more the information around there so that people will be clear about what they have to do. It is here, but if there are further questions, like there's a frequently asked questions sheet that's on gov.ky/coronavirus, and frequent queries, we'll make sure that those are answered on that FAQ, so that people can find the answer to their questions.
We do have a caller online, Ms. Coleman. Which is okay. If not, we'll go to our phones and join this other caller. Good afternoon. Thank you for calling.
Hello.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Okay. Good afternoon. I have two questions.
Yes,
Number
sir.
one is that I heard this before on the talk show, but I'm asking it again. The government caters for the very elderly, retired civil servants that have signs that have three things: heart, pressure, and sugar. And the government have an allowance that to cater for them when they get sick. If they get sick.
Okay. So you wanted to know to what extent government would be
like to hold them and take care of them.
Okay.
I don't see that they get treatment or what.
Okay. So anyone knows if the resources?
I mean, we have, again, under the National Emergency Operations Centre, we have Human Concerns Cluster. Human Concerns Cluster is also definitely looking, as part of our response, at elderly population. Again, I can't talk about the finances at this point, but of course we do have a disaster fund that we're looking at. But again, that would be probably for the overall response. I'm not sure John has anything to say about specific.
Just before you answer, if you're able to either turn off the radio or move substantial away from it, so we don't get a feedback. We do ask our respect for the. But Dr. Lee?
I would just add that the normal passages of how you would normally access healthcare, I'm not sure of your individual circumstances, sir, but the normal ways you would access would be available to you should you need assistance. I would take the normal path. So I'm not sure if you have anybody around you who is able to assist or to reach out for you or to be an advocate for you. Or failing that, if you are in need, then you will need to call a 911 to seek assistance, and they will guide your answer a little bit. They'll find out what your needs are and then direct you accordingly.
And a lot of the information can come through the flu hotline as well as a very, very good line. If you have questions, now obviously we're being inundated already with a lot of calls, and we're trying to expand that capacity. But there are numbers for Digicel and Flow that we can share with you if they're around. Yeah, right. The flu hotline is 1-800.
Yes, sir.
Not a problem. Another question is, you hear about the flus in the Cayman Islands, but I doesn't hear exactly where any of the cases are, because the island is cut up in different sections. And one of the problems is, if you're in that area, why they don't notify the people where they got X amount of patients or people that got it in a certain area, and then from that area it starts to migrate west, east, north, or south. That is something that very interesting that the public needs to know, because they might have family members staying in that area, and they will probably try to get out that area at the time being. You see, so the public should be educated of where this is located. It doesn't have call, no name, but just tell where it's located, and if it's migrating, if it starts to migrate from there into another district or what, east or west. You see, and the public needs to know this, because they got family members out there could get shift from where it's at, because some of their family members might be in that district, in that place, and they doesn't know anything what's happening. They don't hear it in Cayman.
Yes, sir. Similar to as we would report dengue, we usually report dengue from a regional basis. It's our intention that we would provide a lot of information to the public about how the condition is progressing in the country when it arrives. So we would be giving out that information.
And we're also mapping any cases in future at HMCI. We have a mapping facility, but again, that wouldn't be for public consumption. That would be more for our response. Claude, if I can just interrupt very quickly for those who aren't, I'm just trying to get the flu hotline out. The flu hotline is 1-800-534-8600, and the Digicel number is 947-3077, and the email itself, if you have any concerns or queries, is flu@hsa.ky. Sorry, back to you, caller. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Listen, I need an answer on this, because they can. It's no secret. They could give information where we have it. It's the virus in Borden town, and the last check, it seemed as if it's drifting up. Some of it is drifting out of Borden town into another parish or district. You see, so that's not no private thing. They could give that information to the public, so the public would be aware, and they could just keep shifting as they see it keep coming. So they have relatives and family members into the area. You understand?
Yes, sir, Ms. Coleman.
So how does it doesn't say anything where it's at and where it's heading.
Before Ms. Coleman answers that question, I think she's going to answer it. Can I just ask the caller, because I wanted to clarify something in relation to his original question?
Yeah.
Was his original question, or caller, was your original question in relation to coverage for retired civil servants?
Yes.
Did I understand that correctly?
Me? You're talking?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, you.
Yes, no, what what I'm concerned is the most elderly in the bracket of 80 plus.
Okay.
And if government has some assistance there, that if they get sick, they would take them in there as being retired civil servants.
Well, that was my question. So you're talking about pensioners, elderly pensioners?
But not necessarily.
Yeah, but I mean that government would...
But not necessarily civil servants?
Civil servant, I'm talking.
Oh, so civil servants.
Retired civil servant.
Okay, so if you're a retired civil servant, and I don't know about your particular circumstances, but generally speaking, retired civil servants would be covered, would be medically covered in terms of insurance, so that wouldn't be an issue.
So I'm covered with Cynical.
Right, so you would have coverage through Cynical, so you would be fine. That wouldn't be an issue.
And actually, insurance is part of our...
The place, would it be in a place at a hospital for you, in case, which I doesn't pray, I pray that doesn't happen to nobody here that gets sick, it just disappear. But would it be any way there to lodge you, or you have to stay in your home and check it out whether you're sick?
So it depends. It's Dr. Lee here again. So it depends how you're feeling, really. If you're able to manage at home, many people will come through this without too bad any symptoms. So if you're able to manage at home, then we're saying to manage at home. But if you're not able to manage, that's the time that you would need to seek help. But if I can just add about if you're relatively on your own, actually you can protect yourself a lot better, because you can make sure that anybody that comes to their house washes their hands or use hand sanitizer before they get anywhere near your front door, to make sure, or immediately they come into the house, to make sure they don't bring anything in, so you can have your house as like a little fortress and protect yourself.
I hear that, but what I'm saying is, supposing you have to you don't know how last it will long, so you run out of some little thing as food stuff. So you need to get that, or get somebody to go and get it, and you're then going to find many people to go and get it for you. So you need to go out. You're feeling okay to go and get it, but prepare yourself when you go out there, you know.
And again,
collect a few items and then come back home quick and wash up.
Well, so again, part of our National Emergency Operations Centre, under the Human Concerns Cluster, will look at those specific needs of individuals. Obviously, the elder population, we don't want you being too exposed to supermarkets if you don't need to be. So it's finding if you can create a buddy system with others around you that can help with that, or alternatively, if you do need the assistance, of course, we will find a way to get the assistance, be it through the community emergency response teams or, assistance at the Department of Children and Family Services, I think. But again, just trying to set up the system now, a plan for yourself now, in case you do have to be isolated, and again, trying to avoid being out in public too much if this spreads across the island.
Okay, sir.
Well, okay, going back, I'm still not satisfied why it is that they don't say where it is located at Bordentown. They don't have called your names.
We don't actually have a case in Bordentown. So the only confirmed case at this time is at the Health City. So there's no cases in Bordentown. But again, it'll come to a time it may well be around the island. So
they've got some rumor here in Bordentown that it's in Bordentown. 6 cases or 7 cases.
No, that's definitely not been confirmed.
Yes, sir. So I'm the Chief Medical Officer, and I'm aware of all of the cases on the island, and there's been no cases in Bordentown that I'm aware of.
Thank you for hearing that.
Okay, sir.
But all I pray that the staff have got, because you're not going to have a perfect staff operating on there, whether they're maids or whatever it is, because this is a serious thing, and you're going to find some dodgers out there in it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
No, I appreciate that.
I hope they offer their service, whether it's a pay or nothing, but they should be dedicated to the job and do their job regardless. Get into it if they have to get into it, not shun it and let somebody else do it, and then they get the name and the pay and never do nothing. That goes on. A lot of that goes on, man.
Yeah. But thank you very much for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all, and you all have a nice day.
God bless, sir. Take
you.
care. We do have a number of WhatsApp questions, including can a person get reinfected? We have questions relating to the healthcare facilities with the closure of Health City, so we can repose them after the break. Please stay tuned for Talk Today.
ValueMed Pharmacy is your community care partner for health and wellness needs. We offer convenient prescription processing at the counter and online at value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com, with pickup available at the Walkers Road or Bordentown location. We also accept transfer prescriptions from other pharmacies. More than just a pharmacy, shop ValueMed for personal care and beauty products from trusted brands, perfume and gift sets, Hallmark and greeting cards, baby clothes, footwear, handbags, swimwear, home decor, toys, school supplies, and stationery. And home convalescence aids like wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, canes, and hospital beds. With 2 locations to serve you, Walkers Road in Georgetown and in Evron Plaza, Bordentown. Visit ValueMed, more than just a pharmacy.
2020 means perfect vision. And if you have your sights set on driving a new hybrid, then the time is now to check out the new RAV4 and CHR. Just 2 of the many hybrid models that Vamped is bringing to Cayman. Whether you're looking for a smoother and quieter way of driving or want a car that maximizes fuel efficiency while minimizing emissions, there are lots of ways a new hybrid from Vamped can make the difference in your life. Hybrids save fuel, run cleaner, reduce CO2 emissions, and even recharge their batteries without being plugged in. So focus your 2020 vision on a new hybrid from Vamped Motors, and we will see you through. Come to Vamped, home of the hybrid, located on Walkers Road.
If your business is over here, but your customers are over here, adding more yellow to your business will bring you both right here. With everyone searching yellows, print, online, and mobile app, getting your business noticed is easier than ever. Book your consultation today at findyellow.com.
Hi, my name is Neraya LeBlanc. I am the minister and evangelist to the West Bay Church of Christ on 24 Batabano Road. I would love to take this opportunity to invite you to experience God's family at West Bay for yourself. We are a caring congregation that strongly believes in reaching out beyond ourselves to spread the gospel of Christ. We also take great pleasure in ministering to the needs of our people in our community. As God's called out kingdom people, we are in the business of transforming lives for the Master's use. For more information, you can visit our website at westbaycichurchofchrist.org or call us at 946-9294 or 917-1809.
Declaring the word of the Lord.
Cayman Islands Church of Christ presents Word of the Lord.
Word of the Lord, heard Sundays at 6:30 p.m. on Radio Cayman.
National Drug and Alcohol Facts Month in Cayman is bringing a variety of competitions for all ages. Teachers, students, and schools, this is your chance to win big prizes by entering one or more of our competitions. Secondary schools and students, enter our TikTok competition, Battle of the Canvases, and the poster contest. Primary schools, your classroom door competition is all about healthy living. All the deadlines and information is on our website. Enter the competition. Let's get creative and shatter the myths today. For more information, check out our website, ndc.ky, call 949-9000, or email info@ndc.ky.
Get ready for Retrospective, Cayman's National Dance Company's annual show at the Harkwell Theatre, March 27 and 29. Retrospective, a versatile journey of the company's signature dances and new creation. Tickets are $25 for adults and $15 for children, and available at Audiophile, Bang & Olufsen, Radiance Dance Studio, or simply call 926-1826. Retrospective by Cayman National Dance Company is sponsored by CUC, Burger King, ARC Directors, Big Fish, 95.5 FM, Radio Cayman, and Hurley's Media.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
I have various items coming from different suppliers that I need to ship to Cayman. Do you offer consolidation?
Yes, Seaboard Marine offers consolidation for full and less than container loads. We can hold your packages at our Miami warehouse until everything arrives and ship it all in one go. And we have the best rates to Grand Cayman. Visit seaboardmarine.com for more information.
Shipping shore to shore, Seaboard.
Have you lost your mojo? Find it again at Mojo's in Central Terrace, Bayshore Mall, on the waterfront. Happy hour specials 5 to 10 p.m. every night. Free pool every night. Free parking every night. Food, happy hour, and stunning ocean views. Find your mojo at Mojo in Central Terrace. Central Terrace is home to Mojo, Cayman Creperie, and Lucky Slice Pizza.
At Canine Resort and Spa, your dog gets the red carpet treatment. That's why people trust us and pets love us. Offering doggy daycare, boarding, training, and grooming services for any breed, size, or style. From head to tail, we'll make your dog smile.
Choose from 4 grooming packages, from the basic bronze package of a hydrobath shampoo and conditioner, wash and blowout, to the platinum package including spa services like a doggy massage and berry facial. Canine will help your pet look picture perfect. Receive a loyalty card where your 6th grooming package is free. Limited availability.
Visit canineresort.com for details on grooming packages, doggy daycare, and resort services. Canine Resort and Spa, where the posh dogs go.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thank you for joining us. And as we continue discussing about the coronavirus, very grateful to the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. John Lee, the Director of HMCI, Ms. Danielle Coleman, and equally the Director of the CBC, Mr. Charles Clifford, for being our guest. We have a number of questions being posed on our WhatsApp. If we could ask maybe the first, or ask one first. Can a person get reinfected? Do we know? Actually, we'll ask the non-medical expert, Mr. Copeland. No, we won't.
I will start by saying I'm sorry for sneezing and coughing. I've had a cold for a good couple of weeks now, and on and off, and it's not COVID, but it's obviously it looks a bit concerning when I'm coughing and spluttering, and but again, coughing into my arms as opposed to my hand as much as I can.
And we've doused her down with bleach. No, just kidding. We haven't.
I'm doing my best to obviously not share the cold with anyone, but it's in fact, as far as reinfection goes, I mean, we're learning a lot about this every day. It does appear that there is a possibility, and obviously John is much better placed to answer this than me, but there does appear to be a potential of reinfection. So I'll let him carry on with that, but that's what we've heard. Again, this is a very dynamic situation, so we have to be keeping up every day with what the latest is.
Yeah, I don't really have any more information to add than that, but I think everybody's aware of the report of the person, one or two people who've been reinfected, who've had tests that have come positive, they've gone negative, then they've gone positive again.
Yeah.
We don't know the extent of it. Clearly, I don't know. We don't know the extent of it.
Okay. Could we ask a number of other questions as well? And we thank those for listening. Sorry?
I was just going to say, but as time moves on, we're going to get to the vaccine. And this, what's a scientific fact that you may like to know about the vaccine is it's had a fairly stable genetic profile. When it's tested in one country and another, it hasn't mutated into something else. The flu virus is very good because it mutates into something else every little while, which is why it's so successful, because every year you have to change the vaccine against it. But the coronavirus so far has been fairly steady, which means that when we get a vaccine, it'll probably be a good vaccine against it.
All right. Well, if we could then pose a couple of other questions, and we thank those for listening. We hope this information is helpful. I would say hsa.ky/coronavirus is a good avenue to share. We'll remind you of other ways, gov.ky as well.
And hazardmanagement.ky.
And hazard management, all under the auspices of our government. So the number of questions, take them in order. Says, with Health City closing over one patient and some staff, what about the HSA facilities in CTMH? What risk is there of those facilities also closing? Now, we can't speak for them specifically, but maybe probability.
I think it's a balance. There's no right and wrong. You have to get the balance right. But if you can see that the disease has clearly been localized in one place, as we can clearly see with Health City, there's a reason to close that. If it pops up in another hospital, then it's far more likely that it's popped up. I suspect in another hospital it will be far more likely to have popped up from something in the community, because we know that the case that caused that in Health City was from a traveller. So therefore we have a chance to contain it.
Okay. And then of course, sort of supplementary to that, then, what then for those who are more sick? How many ventilators are there on island? What's the number of people who get infected that will require medical help that the local health service can cope with, given the rapid spread of this in so many other countries already?
So the infection rates vary a little bit. They're between 60 and 80% of the population. You've heard that from heads of state around the world say that. So of those 60 to 80%, it is likely that 80% of people will get off with a very mild disease and not need any hospital treatment whatsoever. They'll be able to be managed at home. Of the remaining 20%, 14% are likely to need some additional help, medical help, beyond what you would manage at home. They may need some oxygen therapy, or they may need some IV drip to help keep their fluids up. As we've said, you must keep drinking through the 3 episode when you've got a fever. And then there's 6% who will need more high-level hospital help. So it's a relatively small number that will actually need the highest level of hospital help. I think, Mr. Ebanks, you asked me something else as well in that question. I'm sorry.
No, there was a lot of questions. I should have broken down even more. But let me go back to, so I was asking about, the facilities closing, and then what about those who are sick? I also asked about the ventilators.
Yes, about the. So that's a very nice statistic. It's a great figure. I calculated the other day. If you look around, there are rates of how many ventilators or how many intensive care or high dependency unit beds there are per 100,000 of population. Yes, I know we're not at 100,000 yet, But if you if you scale up the numbers that we have to 100,000, you could then compare yourself with other countries. And in Australia, they have 8 these high dependency or ITU beds per 100,000. In New Zealand, 7. In the United Kingdom, 6. In the United States, they have 26 of these specialist care beds per 100,000. In Cayman, we have an equivalent of 49. So we're incredibly well provided for the highest level of bed. That doesn't mean they're all available immediately and now. That includes the surge capacity that the Health Services Authority have built in. It includes a bed in the BRAC, and it includes the capacity at Health City to be able to help us. But that is the same way we would calculate it as Australia or New Zealand or the USA or the UK would calculate it. So we're well provided on that score. Okay.
Now, before we go to the news, I know that we've addressed this a number of times earlier, but just because of people joining us, and it just shows you the interest that people have. Questions being asked, how soon will Cayman initiate local testing? And do we have the result from the outstanding cases that have been sent for testing?
The reagents for testing arrived today. I've probably let the cat out of the bag, but there we go.
Well, actually, I've heard it before, so okay. You didn't let it out of the bag.
Right. So they arrived today. There is a process. We need to make all of the validation checks, make sure everything is working before we can begin to test. I'm being told Monday, but I think I would say early next week to be able to set up for it. But we have, we're not waiting for anything more in particular. So we're not waiting. Everything is now here on island. The machine, the person with the expertise, and the reagents that we need.
Okay, and then the results for those, we could send off about 6 cases, or we sent off for testing the other day. Some we got back 1. And the others?
We got back 5.
5?
Yeah, so we have the 1 positive case, and then there are 4 negative.
Okay, just for clarity. No, you didn't send that the cat out of the bag. I can't say who did, but if I heard it, everybody else must have heard it. And I heard Monday, but early next week. Okay, thank you for laughing with us as best as we can. We're not making light of the situation, but keeps us awake, gets the endorphins going. Number of other questions and number of other callers. We'll get to those after our headline news. Please join us after the break.
Continuing the Caymanian tradition. Let Cora keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
There's read the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
It's only 2 species that we have here on the island.
Generations present.
Your voice, your choice.
For today's biggest news.
Access to information.
Local, regional, international. This is headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom team.
Today's biggest news.
For the safety of the residents and staff, the Pines Retirement Home Board of Directors and Management have suspended all visitation until further notice. Management, however, assures the public that the facility is cleaned and disinfected daily, and the housekeepers maintain the cleanliness of the building. Good afternoon, I'm Dion Anglin with your headlines. In news elsewhere, Europe is now the epicenter of the global coronavirus pandemic, the head of the World Health Organization says. Dr. Tedros urged countries to use aggressive measures, community mobilization, and social distancing to save lives. His comments came as several European countries reported steep rises in infections and deaths. Italy has recorded its highest daily toll yet. And elite football in Britain has been suspended until at least April 3rd as a result of the spread of coronavirus. All games in England's Premier League, EFL, FA Women's Super League and Women's Championship are postponed. The Premier League said play will start on April 4th, subject to conditions at the time. England's international friendly matches against Italy on March 27th and Denmark 4 days later are off. That's a wrap of your headlines. I'm Dion Anglin.
Stay in touch with Radio Cayman for the latest in news and information.
Follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, www.radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
Your thoughts are just a telephone call away. 1-800-534-8255. Let your voice be heard. And now, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back to Talk Today. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to Dr. John Lee, the Chief Medical Officer of Health. is Daniel Coleman, the director of HMCI, to Mr. Charles Clifford over at, CBC. And I smile and chuckle and I think, man, how we can sometimes make things more difficult for those who are doing the work because we get in the way at points. But thank you for sharing in a very timely, very direct way. We do have a number of callers online as we go to our phones. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm all right. And good afternoon to all your guests.
Good afternoon, sir.
First, I would like publicly, to say that it's very, I thank everyone in your studio for coming to discuss this important subject. And I want also publicly to say that we thank first Mr. Clifford for the good job he's doing in custom and border control. I think he is the right man in the right place. And Dwayne, I am not a person will say something about anybody unless it's been truthful. And that's what all Caymanians know. And I always, thank God when we have the right man in the right place. I think we get always good result. Also, we have good lady in the top of hazard management. I think she doing a fantastic job. I have a question to the chief medical officer, and I don't know if I am right or wrong, maybe, but from my simple knowledge, I think, these days, the other day I was going to the supermarket, I see the health authority doing some blood test and pressure test and all of those stuff. I think it's the timing, in my opinion, the timing of those gathering a lot of people in one place is not the right timing. I mean, when you have people doing all these tests front of a supermarket and a big gathering, I think in this country we need to stop all these big gathering, like, meeting too much people in one place. And that's if one person is infected, could spread the coronavirus in, and those one of the measures most of the countries have the coronavirus, such Iran and China and all these countries, they take measures that they don't have big gathering in one place.
Now, you're referring to the screening on Saturday in collaboration with the local service club?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes,
No,
I mean,
and health authority.
No, the local service club had the screening, and something they do annually. I think in collaboration with a number of the medical personnel.
It's the time to stop that.
Yeah, well,
in the public places.
Fair enough, sir.
And it be done in the hospital in the right way.
Yes, sir. Fair enough. But I mean, that was something that was scheduled, and perhaps Dr. Lee. But I appreciate it, Dr. Lee.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. I think your comment is very timely. The Premier announced yesterday in the evening press conference about COVID that the Cabinet would be discussing the matter of public gatherings today, and that something would come out as a result, either this evening or tomorrow. Certainly before the end of the weekend, we should be hearing something about that. They've had the advice from me as Chief Medical Officer, and then they will need to deliberate and decide what action it is. But this is one of a range of things that they're considering in response to the emergency that's placed upon us by COVID. So it's part of a number of different things, and when I'm not sure what is the order of the information that's going to come out, because they've had a lot of difficult and quite a number of issues to address.
All right, thanks very much. And we do have a number of callers. With the greatest respect, we'll take them all and be as succinct as we can to ensure everybody gets a chance. Good afternoon. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Dwayne, and good afternoon to your guest.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon.
My question is, or my concern is, I am posing this one to Dr. Lee. We have quite a bit of the mental people walking the streets. We have, I know they're all over Cayman, but I'm speaking in particular about West Bay. I've been to Foster's, and do not ask about people not panicking, because Foster's is jam-packed with people. There's nowhere to park, but they're doing their best. They're starting to ration things, like limit different things and things. But let me get back to my question. Now, what are we doing about those mental people that is out there? They're begging. They're all over the place. Some mental people even sleep on other people's porches. Have the government done anything or about to do anything about those sort of people? And also, we're telling older people and our people to stay at home. They can stay at home, but if they don't have the supplies and whatnot, and many people don't have the money, where is all of this coming from? I need for somebody to answer that question, but I know that Dr. Lee might be able to answer the question about the mental people. I thank you all, and let us get together and pray for the health and strength of all that is trying to do their best. Advice, medical advice. I thank you all. I thank Radio Cayman. God bless you all, and let us help each other, that we can get through this thing like we did with Iwan. Only this thing is more dangerous.
Indeed.
Thank you all again.
Thank you too.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am, for the question. I think for the issue of the people who have challenges, some of those who live on the streets or who spend a lot of their time on their streets, this time is a time when no different to any other in many respects. So it's no different when we have the flu or we have dengue. We always need to look out for them and care for them, and yet there is a limit to how much we would want to interfere. I think that if ever you're concerned about somebody, please give an official a call to ask for their guidance, such as the police. They can help. But in general terms, the general information about COVID is pertinent for everybody. So make sure you keep your hands clean, wash them with soap and water, keep your distance 3 to 6 feet from anybody, particularly if they have respiratory symptoms, and catch any sneezes you can into a paper handkerchief or a tissue, and throw it away, and then wash your hands again.
I think I'll just add to that. Again, under the National Emergency Operations Centre, the Needs Assessment Unit are very much part of that, and we do realise that this is going to be quite an economic issue in the future, that we're putting things in place now for the sort of response and recovery, because of course a lot of people will have significant financial issues as a result if their business is closed down or they have to close for a couple of weeks here and there. We've also got a mental health expert in the National Emergency Operations Centre, and this is something that we've been working on for some time now, about 8-9 months, to make sure that all our EMC shelters, which are not activated right now, but all our EMCs do have mental health practitioners in there. So we're making sure that decisions are being made in the NEAC with that hat on. Obviously, it's decisions that, the way that impact us without that expertise is very difficult to determine. So having that expert in there to determine decisions with a mental health hat on is really important. So she's been part of the whole process since the get-go.
Indeed. We do have a number of other callers. Thank you equally for your time. Let's go to our phones, though. Welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Very grateful, thank you, and good afternoon to your guests. I have 3 questions, so I'll just ask the questions and hopefully they can be answered.
Yes, ma'am.
The first one, now that Cayman has 1 confirmed case and possibly more, my question to that is, any Caymanian flying into any jurisdiction, will they be quarantined upon arrival, assuming that they will be allowed to stay? That's one question. The other question is the airplanes. No one is, coming on the planes to clean the tray tables, the armrests, the pouches, and so on. I know that they're telling everybody to wash their hands, keep their hands clean, keep them out of their face and stuff, which is fine. But if the areas that they're in aren't cleaned, that don't really help much, at least in my opinion. And the other question that I have is, upon checking, whether leaving Grand Cayman or entering Grand Cayman, especially entering Grand Cayman, shouldn't the airline agents be doing some process of screening to find out where exactly did your trip originate? And upon arrival in Grand Cayman, the immigration officers and customs officers should be doing the same thing, and they are not. So
contact tracing.
Pardon?
Yeah, sort of a bit of a contact tracing with patients, but sort of origin as well. Yeah, okay.
I mean, you could have taken a flight to Miami to Grand Cayman, but your trip may have originated elsewhere from several jurisdictions. But the most important question I would like answered now is, a person leaving Grand Cayman, going to any jurisdiction, now that we have tested positive for it, will that person be put in quarantine, assuming they are allowed admittance?
All right. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
Well, thank you very much, caller. And I think to the first question that you asked, that would be a matter for national policy in whichever country they're entering. So it's a bit difficult to answer that because it really is dependent on national policy in the country that you're traveling to. But it is entirely possible that they could be quarantined. We just don't know. It just depends on which country it is.
And it's a very dynamic situation.
Right.
So again, airlift could be an issue.
And I suppose while I have the floor, if I could just address the final question, the third question that she had in relation to travel history. I think as this virus spreads around the world, the whole issue of travel history is becoming less and less important to what we do on the front line in terms of screening passengers. So we have hotbeds. We know that China, other places, South Korea, and Italy, places like that. So those are real hotbeds for the virus, and we've focused on individuals coming from those areas. We've also had, let me put it this way, we have the ability to understand the travel history of individuals coming into the country because we have international partnerships and dialogue. So we have been able to identify in a number of cases travel history for individuals, and on that basis, and you heard Dr. Lee speak to this earlier, we have referred a number of cases to the medical experts at the airport for them to interview and to do assessments. So that's how we've been following through with these leads, and I think we've been having good results as a result of that collaboration. But because it is spreading, and it has spread to over 100 countries now, including the United States. I think when I last checked, I think it was 40 states, or maybe it's more now, in the U.S. That's been impacted. We need to recognize that 82% of our tourists still come from the United States market. So we have to have protocols in place in relation to how we manage that and how we process passengers. And the whole issue of asking the same questions to every passenger who may not be showing symptoms, there's very little value in that, and the experts will tell you that. All that will do is simply delay the processing time.
Right. Yeah. Okay, we do have a couple of questions, but we also have some callers. Let's go to the phones first. Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for sharing. Good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This is Kevin Morales over at the Cayman Compass.
Hey, Kevin.
Hi, everybody. Just first of all, I want to thank you guys for all taking the time to be on today and answer people's questions. It's much appreciated. We have one specifically, I guess, about the date of arrival. So we got it clarified from a spokesperson at Health City today that they arrived on the 29th of February. We don't have the exact ship that they came in on confirmed, but we know that the Italian ship, the Costa Luminosa, was in port that day. At the time, we were told by the port director that there's nothing to fear in letting these passengers come off of that ship. And again, I just wanted to stress, we don't have it confirmed that that was the ship he was on. But my question is, was government, I guess, too slow in its reaction to what's going on with the coronavirus? And I guess, has the public been let down, I guess, by some of the policies of government?
Maybe directed to the politicians, no?
There are no politicians.
But they're not making themselves available. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I leave it to the panel, but perhaps that's more for politicians to answer. With respect, I leave it to our esteemed panel to guess. But thanks so much, Kevin.
Well, I mean, I think one thing I would like to say about that is, and I think we have to view this from the perspective of what is happening around the world, right? To say that governments have reacted too slowly is a sweeping indictment, because to say that the Cayman Islands government has reacted too slowly is a sweeping indictment, because if that is the case, then it means that governments around the world have reacted too slowly. The truth is, I don't think there's a lot of difference between the way that this disease has spread and other diseases. Perhaps this one has spread a little faster, and Dr. Lee can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think with respect to the H1N1 as an example, that was a substantial threat as well. And there were a lot of children that were dying from that. But I think the difference today is that there's a much greater social media presence, and therefore we have a lot of false information going out there. But I personally, I mean, I don't agree with the sort of thought that government has reacted too slowly. We've done everything that we could possibly do, just like I think most governments have around the world. But these, the world is quite different now in terms of how people move around by ship and aircraft.
Right.
And it's difficult to stop these things without completely closing down your borders. And if you're going to have that discussion, there are a whole list of implications we can talk about. You would need a separate show for us just to deal with those issues. But those types of decisions about completely closing your borders, those are not easy decisions to make for any country to make, especially a country like Cayman that is dependent on imports and tourism and financial services. 93% of what we consume is imported.
Right.
So what happens to us if you close our borders?
Yeah, your supply chain gets cut off as well.
It's completely cut off.
It's been a long balance. I mean, I think obviously the health sector have been working on this a long time, but the National Emergency Operations Centre was activated very early as a precaution. So I think we have been on the front end of this. The fact that we were operating with the full emergency operations for, I guess, 8, 9, 10, 11, whatever days, 12 days without having a case. And we've all been functioning around the clock. So we have this sort of what we call a drill. So every morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, with the whole National Emergency Operations Centre meet. And we have situational reports coming in midday, and then we have 3 o'clock a policy meeting every day. We've also been meeting with the executive. So there has been a lot going on behind the scenes. So I think we have been ahead of this, albeit it's one of those things that changes dramatically very quickly, as we've seen all around the world.
Yeah, I mean, Saturday to Monday, a lot has changed.
Yeah.
One final quick break, and then we'll continue. Please join us after the break.
Cayman Water would like to advise the public of roadwork interruptions on the West Bay Road between the Kamanabig Underpass in front of Burger King down to the Palm Heights Hotel, formerly Cayman Beach Suites, on Friday, March 13th and on Saturday, March 14th between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. Island Paving will be repairing the rough road surface. That's roadwork on the West Bay Road between Burger King and Palm Heights Hotel, 7:30 a.m. until 5 p.m. this Friday and Saturday. Drivers are being asked to proceed with caution and to obey all traffic signs. Cayman Water apologizes to the public for any inconvenience caused.
Hi, I am Dr. Lee, Chief Medical Officer in the Ministry of Health. The Ministry and the Department of Public Health, along with our partners, are working hard to help protect residents from the novel coronavirus. Did you know that following travel advisories is especially helpful in controlling infections? So, avoid travel if you have a cough, flu-like symptoms, and a fever. It's also important to practice general infection prevention measures at all times. That means frequently wash your hands and avoid close contact with people suffering with acute respiratory symptoms. To read more about the Public Health's travel advisory and other updates, please visit hsa.ky.
Headlines.
With the latest headlines.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international.
Headlines.
Turning to international news. Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
Talk today.
but I do have some questions.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. Dr. John Lee, Miss Danielle Clifford. No.
You made him jump a bit there.
No, sorry. I should not joke. Mr. Clifford
He
was
looked very concerned all of a sudden.
Thank you for laughing at me. I apologize.
I just wanted to say I could multitask, you see.
Very effectively, very effective. I know people, no, listen, laughter is good medicine. No, in the studio, Mr. Charles Clifford. Thank you very much. Can we start off this next round? Well, actually, I'll ask the questions earlier. But maybe before we go to the caller, ask this question in relation, you've addressed earlier the Cayman Airways flight with the passenger and listeners inquiring, what about the other passengers? You addressed it earlier. Do we have any further details on the flight? Where did the flight come from and the like?
Okay.
I know you did, but share with us again.
Right. So the last update I gave, I haven't received an update since that. And just for the benefit of those who perhaps were not listening at that time, the majority of passengers have deplaned. The medical team was still on board in the business class section, processing those passengers because that's where the passenger who was displaying the symptoms was seated. So they were interacting, the medical team was interacting and making assessments on those passengers, and of course the crew is still on board. It was Cayman Airways Flight 103 from Miami, and at this point I don't have any additional information.
Okay, thanks very much.
But only to say, just to underscore again, that the medical team on the ground at the airport is working with our CBC staff, so the medical advice would be provided to the passengers who arrived on that flight in terms of whether or not any of them or how many of them should self-isolate. Yeah.
Okay. A couple other questions with respect to students and healthcare workers and aides and the like. But a couple of callers, so let's take the calls first. Yep. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you today, sir?
I'd like to really thank your panel for being there and for their significant and invaluable contribution to the wellness of our community. Daniel, Charles, and Dr. John. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to address a caller who called in regarding the medical screening, which was initiated by Rotary Central over the last weekend. I consider his discussion a little bit of a fire starter, and a bit of ignorance needs to be dispelled. This initiative is usually an annual one, and this year it was planned 6 months in advance, and had an intersection of community partnership with the medical community, our business community, and our service clubs community. We facilitate access to health screening by people who have challenges regarding their ability to pay, and sometimes need to be granted this opportunity obstacle-free to enable them to literally live. We have effected very good planning, so this was not planned without consideration of the staff that was needed, and the locations were well chosen. They were not intersections for the dispensation of disease as that was inferred. I would like to make it absolutely clear that of the 600 and odd people that we screened, we intervened significantly in at least 30% of those lives, considering the next day as a better day for them because they were part of our screening. So I'd like to dispel any sort of challenge that person may have. I will try to give him the benefit of the doubt. We expanded our ambit to include a number of emerging scenarios, even regarding flu symptoms, and redirecting them to emergency services. We have done our civic duty, and we make no apologies to anybody, including that particular.
Right.
first.
Well, as we shared earlier, I mean, that was something that was scheduled. We helped to promote it. It was scheduled for Saturday. Between Saturday and Monday, a lot transpired. So, as you shared, it is a service, and look forward annually to preparing with you. But thanks for sharing that, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
It's
you.
a very, very good point. I mean,
Yeah.
the health fair is a fantastic fair, and it
Yeah.
gives a lot of people opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have
Yeah.
during the year.
It's great.
All right. Can we then, as we wrap up, perhaps ask a couple of other quick questions from some of our listeners? One is asking about, as our students, so as say our children returning home from school over the next coming weeks and so on. You've shared it's a very fluid and dynamic, ever-changing scenario. But our Caymanian students coming home for their summer break, school break, what if anything, should we be concerned about what happens to them? Any sort of guidance you can offer?
If I may tackle with the regulations on the public health law,
Mhm.
they state that an infected region is China, and so currently anybody returning from an infected region would need to go into self-quarantine for 2 weeks, a returning resident, Caymanian or otherwise resident. That list is currently only China. We've yet to find out if that list is going to expand, but they would need to go back. They would, if they're from one of those areas, they would need to go into self-quarantine, and the public health department would follow them.
Okay.
Yeah. And certainly as Caymanians returning to their country, they have to be allowed to return. So there's no question about whether or not there would be a restriction in that regard. The only question is how do we treat them when they arrive, and what advice we would give them, and Dr. Lee has just explained that. So,
okay. Well, I certainly appreciate that. And then follow up on a question in relation to the whole issue of the Cayman Airways flight. This person says, as the plane is enclosed for at least an hour, why would all the other passengers be allowed to deplane? I know you addressed that earlier. The medical personnel assessed it, the business class.
Yeah, those. I mean, we take advice from the medical personnel. They made the assessment, and they are the medical experts. So we are not. So we have to accept that advice. And I'm not on the ground at the airport now, so I was getting updates since we've been on the air, and the medical experts may have given additional advice. Since we last got the update, I'm not sure what that is.
I certainly appreciate it, Dr. Lee.
And we certainly, I know that all of the airlines and the airport staff and CBC are aware of quite a lot of information that's come out from the national and international agencies with regards to how to handle the care of passengers, either be suspect or in general with the heightened level of security. So from IATA and so on, there's a lot of information which I know everybody has been reading.
Mm-hmm. Maybe the final question we ask, again, this one questions if government is putting in place any protocols for the companies that provide caregiver services for their workers who are sort of taking care of the sick and elderly. Again, things will probably evolve as the weeks unfold with respect to companies taking private measures. We've seen that increasing, but do we know any mandates thus far?
No. I mean, I think all agencies are putting together. Well, I should say putting together. They're beginning to finalize and look at where they may need to make adjustments to their business continuity plans. So, depending on what happens, if you have as an example, schools having to close, all of us are going to have a certain number of staff members that would be impacted by that because they simply don't have anyone at home to look after their kids.
Mm-hmm.
So there are things like that we have to plan for. And all of that stuff goes into our business continuity plans, and every agency in government is undertaking that now. And we've always had business continuity plans for things like hurricanes, as an example. And now, for this particular challenge, we simply update our plans and make what changes we need to.
But we've actually made a template. So hazard management, we've been working very closely with the continuity of operations and portfolio of civil service to come up with a template, and all templates will be in today, but we will have that online on the hazard management site, which is www.caymanprepared.ky. And again, that's a template that can be used across the board if you're a private sector, public sector, whatever you want to use it for. But I think it's really critical that people are thinking about continuity of operations. So what happens if half your staff can't get to work? Can you operate from home? There's so many considerations you need to make sure you're thinking about, and I guess this template really will help. Because obviously it's quite overwhelming when you think about how much you have to think about. So this template will help. So again, it's on our hazard management website.
All right. If we could perhaps pose the question, and then Dr. Lee, maybe direct it to you respectfully, and you can determine whether it's opportune time to answer. With respect, says, will the government be put in the quarantine unit where the physical therapy unit was located? So the location of that.
Yes, so the Health Service Authority is not a quarantine area, it's a treatment area. So the facility that they're considering moving the way they provide their services around, although it was originally stated that the physiotherapy area would be used for the surge capacity, they now realize that because of the piped oxygen and the piped vacuum, the essential services, they're likely to move another service from the hospital into that area in order to put the surge capacity area where all the plug-in services are available in the wall, rather than have lots of freestanding bottles of oxygen which are getting in the way and that sort of thing. So that is their plan.
And we are looking at different facilities. I mean, potential quarantine facilities. We're looking at a number of different possibilities under the National Emergency Operations Centre. And there are things that, that we're underway, but it's just trying to find a location that's actually going to be fit for purpose, and we'll obviously be looking for volunteers as well.
This idea about quarantine, I think everybody's really hanging on to it. I wouldn't hang on to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's pointless. What we need to do is to isolate people.
Self-isolation at home.
Yes, there is the legal power to force people to quarantine. I'm not denying that. But if a lot of people get sick, then they're going to have to self-isolate. We will not have the ability to go around and police this matter. We're going to have to trust people to do the right thing and put themselves away until they're better again.
And the truth is, I don't. Sorry, I thought you were.
No, that's fine.
I would say the truth is, I don't think any country has the capacity to do that. So, we have to recognize that.
I think it comes back to us, and I'm not trying to be insensitive or dismissive, but I think it comes back to us as being reasonable, responsible, rational people, caring for each other. Not stocking up on something at the expense of our neighbor, but not being foolish and not providing for the things we need.
Right.
But if everybody works together, just like we did after Hurricane Ivan, it won't be as detrimental as it would be if we decide to become less than cooperative.
Yeah, it can't be each man for itself. We have to work together as a community to make sure we're looking out for each other. And Cayman Kind has never been needed so much as now, so we really look out for each other and help each other.
But we thank each of you, not just for your time, extended time this afternoon, but for your continued diligence. I pray you will be able to get some rest mentally and physically. If we can help to disseminate timely, accurate information, our studios are available.
Thank
you. If I may, unless you tell me otherwise, please, I want to invite people to listen to reliable, credible sources, share information responsibly. It's good to share, but do so properly. Right. Self-isolate. And, Dr. Lee, thank you, sir.
Don't forget, catch it, trash it, bin it. So catch a sneeze in a tissue.
Wash it.
Trash it.
Wash it.
I'm sorry, wash it. I'm sorry.
Catch
I'm
it, trash
tired.
it, wash it.
Cash it, wash it, trash it.
Catch it, trash it, wash it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would joke and say something about it, but I won't say that, Mr. Clifford.
Well, I just wanted to again sincerely thank my officers on the front line for their commitment and dedication. And we continue to work, as I said, collaboratively with all the other government agencies to make sure that we effectively meet this challenge, and we will get through it. We've overcome other challenges. Someone that called in earlier mentioned Hurricane Ivan, and we will get beyond this, and we will address it, and we'll learn some lessons from it for future challenges. So the colleagues that I have at the table here with me, I want to sincerely thank them. They've been very helpful to us, and I think Mr. Hurlson that called in earlier really summarized, as I said, very eloquently, how the civil service is operating. He could have easily been a panelist here today with us. But thank you very much, Sterling. Appreciate it.
You're most welcome. And thank you all very much. Have a safe weekend.
Thank you very much.
And honestly, get some rest, get some coconut water, and see where it goes. Okay. And to our listeners, stay tuned to Radio Cayman. We don't say this lightly. Of course, there are other media outlets and other ways, but please ensure that you feel comfortable, that the information you have is timely, is credible, and so that you share responsibly, not to inflame people, not to incite, certainly not to cause them to become alarmed because the information is inaccurate. Well, Monday's another day. Trust and prayer will be a part of it. Until then, Be blessed.